We are back on Taking Care of Business on Kern Radio, News Talk 1180, 1230 KGEO, and 1410 KERI. Our in-studio guests, Marvin Dean from Kern Supporters for High-Speed Rail and Jeff Taylor from Save Bakersfield Committee, talking about high-speed rail.
I have a question for Marvin. Marvin, Bakersfield, as you know, and most of the cities in the San Joaquin Valley have said they're not supportive of high-speed rail. Yet Fresno is real supportive, and it looks like if it does go through, that Fresno is going to get the maintenance facility, and that's where most of the jobs are going to be, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's why that's a good point. That's a very reason why we're trying to say we in Kern County and the city of Bakersfield need to engage this process. I'm fine from my position. They're reaching out. That's the reason why these people are coming here, that they're willing to do something to mitigate the concerns we have. I really believe that. And with the second phase of this thing going south, I believe we are in a prime position, and that might be something our leaders can try to negotiate. Because as long as you engage, it's all politics. You know how that works. And we need to get something to satisfy this community. And I think the maintenance yard would be a big plum that these people might be willing to do, to throw something on the table.
But
if
it's
we're
not
engaged.
going to happen. It's already been decided.
No, it hasn't been decided on the maintenance yard has not been decided. It has not been decided.
My understanding is Fresno's really put a big push
they
on,
are.
invested
They're
a lot of money,
right.
and have a lot of support for it.
Right, they're pushing it, but but I'm telling you, that decision has not been made yet. And I think we are still in the running for it. And then the last thing I want to say, just a segment of something was said earlier. I was involved in these discussions early on, back 10 years ago. The city of Bakersfield at one time wanted that downtown station. They wanted this high-speed rail to come through downtown, and they wanted to have a downtown station of the high-speed rail next to the Amtrak station. Here's what happened, and that's exactly what the proposing was, to go right through that quarter. But I have to just say this, and I love people over the city, but they did not plan for it. They started building all these projects in the right-of-way, Mill Creek and a lot of them that Jeff mentioned. Now, if this project goes forward, it's going to take out a lot of those things. So we didn't plan for what we asked. So it's a valid concern, but I just don't want to think people think, well, they just, Sacramento came in here and just decided to put it there. We asked for it, and now we got to live with it. And I think on the potato, I haven't made a position on the three routes. Jeff's probably more up on that, but my position, I'm not taking a position on the routing. My concern is it affects the least amount of people and what makes sense, and that's what we ought to go with instead of the politics.
Well, we not only have the routing of the railroad, or the high-speed rail, but we have the routing of the Truxton. I call it the Truxton Freeway. We have a freeway that ends at Truxton and ends at Allen Road. We've got a Highway 58 that ends. When are we going to finish a project?
I agree, and all those things. At one time, we were talking about routing this thing out near the airport to have that tie-in. But all I'm trying to say is I don't really think it's been decided yet. We're still with the ERI process. But I don't think it's too early to continue to negotiate and try to get the best thing we can. That's why I think we need to keep the pressure on them.
Now, Jeff, you said there's going to be at least 320 businesses destroyed. They'll lose about 750 jobs. But Marvin keeps saying
1,750 jobs.
Okay, but Marvin keeps saying it's going to increase 140,000 jobs.
That's flawed data. I mean, you can. If I saw a video not too long ago about how they put modern rail systems in. It's mechanized. They make a track, and they have a train on it, and they lay track out in front of them. There's about 5 people on both sides of the track, and they lay 10s and 20, 50 miles a day. So it's not going to employ that many jobs.
Now somebody has to build the trains, and where are they going to be built?
That's a good question. We're not looking at it like it's going to be a high-speed rail train. Okay, it's going to be a new Amtrak corridor. They're going to eliminate the services between local communities of Corcoran, Hanford, and Wasco, and eventually Bakersfield, the existing passenger rail system we know as Amtrak. And if it ever does become a high-speed rail train, it's going to those trains are going to be built in other countries where they build high-speed rail trains, in France, in Japan.
And China.
That's right. And so all the good jobs will be in other countries. But you have to remember that the figure that I've given you of $68 billion for a much reduced project of 480 miles, that's just a wink and nod promise we're going to get some high-speed rail somewhere in there. You have to remember that that figure doesn't include any electrification, any power source. any power grid for this thing. So, and it doesn't include heavy maintenance facility. Now, Marvin brings up heavy maintenance facility. That's a dishonest ploy that the high-speed rail project is using to prevent widespread revolt against this project. It's like a carrot that they hang in front of numerous different towns up and down this project, and they say, listen, don't oppose it because you might get all the economic benefits of this heavy maintenance facility, and you can't oppose it for that reason. I agree. I think this thing's going to be built in Fresno. And Mr. Dean brought up Fresno. The reason why there's not widespread opposition in Fresno is there's not widespread impacts like there is in Bakersfield. They're going to cut they're going to put a stake through the heart of Bakersfield with this thing. It's going to be so high that the noise is going to travel. Just imagine how that noise is going to travel in the foggy season. And we're going to have to look at this thing elevated through the entire corridor, and it's going to change our culture in Bakersfield. It's going to change our quality of life forever, when all they had to do was either slow that thing down enough to where they can stay on the existing BNSF corridor and come into the station, or more realistically, put this thing outside of town where it won't tear up near so many businesses, private properties, and those types of things.
One of my favorite rides at Disneyland is the monorail.
Mine too. and that's futuristic.
Our guests in studio, Jeff Taylor from Save Bakersfield Committee and Marvin Dean from Kern Supporters for High-Speed Rail, talking about high-speed rail. And
yes, I had
Marvin, you wanted to respond to that.
A couple things I wanted to say. It's not direct response to Jeff, but I just some of the comments he made. First of all, City of Fresno, this thing is coming right through downtown Fresno. So I want to make sure we understand that, like we talked about Bakersfield. The second part of that I want to say is that there is a provision that says buy U.S. steel. There'll be no Chinese steel on this project. That's a provision of the act to pass this thing. So now we don't know where the trains are going to be made, but I know that I went to a meeting up in San Francisco where anyway, there's some firms that are up in the U.S. that's based in the U.S. is also looking at bidding to do the development of the train itself, but that is not a part of, like Jeff said, that's not a part of this first phase. We'll just get the tracks laid. The second thing about the jobs, those 100 to 450,000 jobs, that's backed by studies that were did, and I would just say you could fact check that, or I could probably get something from the authority that I could provide you all later, because I'm not just throwing these numbers off the top of my head, and it was something that was fact checked. I just wanted to say that.
There's a lot of flawed data in that EIR and the business plan. I guarantee you that.
One thing I just can't get beyond, from my own thinking, is the money. It's just, where do we come up with the money? Everybody says we're going to wait, and the private sector is going to jump into this, and they're really going to be a part of it. Private sector's running from this. They're not walking from it. They're running from it.
Well, Michael Rubio's the one that told us private sector was going to be investing.
Well, and Rubio's figures were $1 billion, and he gave some example.
No, $100 billion.
No, $1 billion that the private sector has given to this point.
Oh,
and $1 billion is a heck of a lot less than the 66 or $100 billion that we're going to need on this thing.
Well, that's a real concern. But I can't speak to that.
There is no private investment on this project at this point. It's all a promise of bonds, California bonds at 30 years of interest, and let's just say that's going to make if you borrow $60 billion, it's going to cost $120 billion at the end of the 30 years. So. And that's just for the first phase. So
yeah, Marvin, when we get back from the break, I have a question for you about, speaking of funding, states are running away from this. They're not, they're saying, hey, give the money to California. We don't want it. So when we come back from the break, if you could address that question.
Sure.
Why are states running away from this? Not walking, running away from it.
Sure.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Kern Radio, News Talk 1180.